Welcome back to Mental Health for Creative Minds, the mental well-being podcast for creative professionals in film and theater. I'm your host, coach, and fellow creative professional, Jessica McGann, and today I'm thrilled to be diving into a conversation that bridges the world of creativity and life skills. In this episode, we'll explore how the skills we learn as performers can also be powerful tools for everyday life. And joining me in this conversation is the incredibly talented and oh so kind and hilarious Dana Puddicombe, who hails from Roche's Line, Newfoundland, and has been a professional actor for over 20 years. Her impressive television credits include Son of Critch, The Handmaid's Tale, Republic of Doyle, Baroness von Sketch, and truly so many more. Recently, Dana was nominated for a Canadian Screen Award for her supporting role in the digital series What Odds, and co-created, wrote, and produced the award-winning digital series Band Ladies, which received funding from the very competitive Bell and IPF funds. This series ended up earning a Canadian Screen Award, CAFCAD, and ACTRA Ensemble nominations, and various accolades from audiences and film festivals alike. Beyond acting, Dana is a private audition coach and an improv comedy coach. And in our conversation, Dana will teach us the principles of improv, such as the yes and rule, avoiding assumptions, and the importance of lifting up your partner. And together, we will explore how these performance skills can also be applied to everyday life, fostering better communication, collaboration, courage, and community. So get ready for an insightful conversation that is also so fun and is sure to leave you inspired to take some brave steps in your own life and your career. So without further ado, let's dive in. Dana, I am so excited to dive into this conversation with you. I swear, for the longest time since learning life skills, I've really recognized how much of a correlation there is between the things that I learned as an actor and a performer and the things that we want to be doing as just everyday human beings. So I'm excited to explore this conversation, and perhaps you can just start us off by telling me how the heck you found yourself in improv. Because that shit is scary, Dana.
Yeah, I mean, it is so scary, and it is like it takes such bravery and it takes such, it's a huge thing to get up in front of people as it is, but it really kind of set me free in terms of it actually like released my fears in a certain way. My background is in acting, and I went to theater school and worked in theater, I've worked in television, I've worked all over, and I was in a time in my life I had done like an improv for actors class in my 20s, and I enjoyed
Yeah.
it, but I didn't really, it was just like kind of more short form games, and I just thought it was like a cool tool because I've always been, leaning into the comedic. I've always been more of a comedic actor.
Yeah.
And then I was doing a bunch of plays, and I was, it was a lot of dialogue, and yeah, something just collided, and I started to have a lot of anxiety about learning my lines, a lot of performance anxiety related to that, and I wasn't enjoying it. And I was like going over all of my lines, like I was saying my line in my head before I was delivering it. I wasn't in the moment of what
Hmm.
was going on, and I recognized that, like, if I'm going to keep doing this, I need to figure this out because I'm not in a place of joy, and I'm anxious, and it's just never where I was, and I knew that I needed to solve it quickly. So I signed up for to audition for an improv class at Second City, and it was still in my general interest. It wasn't like something I was dreading to do. It was like, oh, this is great, I'll do this, meet some people. Like, it was a positive thing altogether.
Hmm.
And it ended up to be a long form improv class, which is a bit different than kind of like general improv. It's really preparing the people who are doing it to tell longer stories, longer themes, to explore stuff in various scenes over a period of time. And I didn't realize that when I got into it. So when I first started the conservatory at Second City, which is like, 6 months of your life, I just didn't realize what I was getting myself into. And my brain broke. I was like, what is this? What's going on? And really struggled through it and was really terrible at it for a long time. I still don't know if I'm good at it, but I definitely got to a point that it made sense to me, and it started to make everything make sense to me, and it started to be the thing that I love the most. And yeah, doing improv just turned into like a massive love of my life for sure.
I love that you identified this anxiety or this fear and this stress within you. And instead of just avoiding it and being like, you know what, maybe this isn't for me, you leaned into it and went, how can I learn how to do this better? Or how can I help myself here? Because I know that I can do this. And that's so scary. Like so many people wouldn't be able to do that, to stand on front of a stage with nothing prepared and be like, I'm about to entertain you. Watch me.
Well, I think the most important part of it is that it doesn't happen overnight, and you have to like fail forward in improv all the time, even at every level that you get to. I just had a performance with a group that I really love, and we've started working together, and it's really awesome. And we had a performance the other night that just wasn't, things weren't clicking the way that we've been preparing them to do. And it was a really wonderful moment as team to be able to talk about it and to figure out, okay, what do we do next time? How do we attack this? What is going on? And so it's a work that's a constant work. I don't think you ever get to like the top of the mountain with it. You know what
And
I
isn't
mean?
that just life in general? We're always working towards something. The finish line seems to always be changing, and you're always learning and adapting as you go. And I think you kind of already pinpointed kind of already a life skill that we can reap from improv, which is the idea of failing forward. Can you pull
Yeah.
that out a little bit? Like, what do you mean by failing forward?
Well, I think in improv principles, it happens, it can be looked at in a lot of different ways. One way that you learn a lot about your impulses, which is what you need to hone in such a way in your communication, from having the experience with all of the elements of it. You can rehearse things in a rehearsal room, and that's one way. But the stresses and the feeling and the pressure of being on stage, you need to have that happen. And sometimes you need to deny an impulse or follow one and feel what it feels like, and feel what it feels like after, to understand really in your bones, so that you can
Hmm.
make those quick judgments and movements and decisions. It's all about quick decision making. It's picking a lane and going 100%, right? Which is a great, thing, absolutely, when it comes to, I guess, a life lesson is, you got to pick a lane and you got to go for it. And then another element, I guess, of the failing forward is that improv really challenges you to change the way you look at mistakes, to challenge what we think of as mistakes. Because a lot of times when you really let yourself go in an improv scene, or when you really aren't pre-planning and just really seeing what happens and what you're inspired by, it's all the little hiccups or the little interesting things that end up happening in the scene that end up making the scene really beautiful and give you natural
Yeah.
things to react to, and allow you to have really fresh perspectives of things that you wouldn't imagine to exist in one scenario. So it's usually the mistakes that end up to be the fun of the scene. So you start to correlate the idea of the excitement of the unknown, as opposed to the dread and the worry of what you're going to do, and that you're going to be exposed as somebody who doesn't know what's coming next, when none of us know what's coming next ever. So, it really allows you to explore that in a way that's really joyful and exciting and healthy.
There's so much to that. Like there's this release of expectations, this embracing new opportunities, acting on your feet, learning from falling on your face. And you've even, just from what I'm hearing, has experienced how the things that are going wrong are sometimes these little hidden gems that you didn't even know existed. And I think that it's just such a parallel to life. And especially if you are a freelancer or a creator, where you're constantly adapting and failing. There's so much failing and so much rejection in this, and being able to pick up and roll with the punches and learn from those moments, or see the wins in those, rather than viewing it as like everything's against me, or I'm not good enough, or this world. It's really choosing the perspective you have in those moments and rolling with the punches, going, all right, here we go. This isn't the path I wanted, but this is the path we're on. How am I going to respond to this? And choosing to
And
respond in that positive way.
yeah, totally. And like then, like, how am I going to respond to it and honor the things that are happening and the things that are around me, and like how do I pay attention to those things? And actually, like, the things in improv, like the mistakes that in normal scenarios you would try to cover up, hide away, edit out, fix, all of those things, you train yourselves to take a spotlight and put the spotlight on them. And that's for a few reasons. A, because it becomes an interesting thing to explore. You start to learn that you want to like focus on the interesting thing and figure out about it and play with it. But it also validates the person who, say, makes the mistake. If we're doing a pattern of words or something and somebody repeats the word when they weren't supposed to, in improv, what we want to do is have another player also repeat the word. The pattern is now changed, that repeating the word is now part of the pattern. So you're absorbing the mistakes, and when everybody honors them, we're celebrating them rather than diminishing them or shaming them or, yeah, all those things. So it ends up to be that you're really turning the whole thing right on its head. You're really victoriously celebrating the thing that went wrong. You know what I mean?
Oh, I so know what you need. I'm so happy that you brought that up because I did know that one. And like, again, another correlation to life. Like when we mess up, you do not want to just walk past it, ignore it, or press it aside. There's so much shame or guilt that can be associated with it. But there's actually a world of benefits that you can reap if you actually spend some time acknowledging it, putting the spotlight on it for a hot second, being like, oh, I see how what I can learn from this, or I can see why that happened, or what can I make from this, or how can I learn and grow and adapt rather than just being like shoving it under the rug or pushing it to the side. The most common improv rule that I know is the yes and rule.
Mm-hmm.
Always adding or contributing or building upon what you're already given. Can you tell
Yes.
us and elaborate on this rule for anyone who
Yeah.
might not know it?
Yeah, so a yes and is like the improv mantra, I guess that's most well known. And the concept or the idea of yes and is that whatever suggestion somebody puts out, you honor it by saying that is true and totally accepting whatever reality or whatever idea they've put out on the table. But
Mhm.
then you take it to the next level by adding to it, fleshing it out even further, building it even more. It's the, I like to say, like, brick by brick we build a house, right? It's you offer this bit and then and you say yes to it, and that's the reality, and then that inspires me to bring something that fits in that reality. So it's the idea of adding, but it's adding while, while honoring what was brought before.
What is the mistake that a lot of people fall into when it comes to the yes and rule?
I guess yes and is really powerful because it's very clear in terms of it's like a very easy rule to kind of look at and say like, okay, I get that. Yes, I say yes, and I give also. I think that sometimes we can be, or it happens in improv, especially as people are getting good and they're trying to be smoother and they want to finesse their improv so it's not as clunky. Sometimes we can be afraid of like of impacting things too much, like
Mhm.
making a suggestion, offering something that's, making a clear offer. Sometimes we just agree and put the onus on the other person to add, and we'll just keep on agreeing and agreeing. And I think that the
Mhm.
power of yes and to its, highest power is that, you are also affecting, also adding, also altering, because it's a gift to your partner. Like, I always think about that in communication with people too. It's like I want to map to people. Like I'm totally, I love it when somebody says, "Hey, this is what bothers me," or "This is something that I don't particularly like," or "This is something that really makes me happy," or something that works, because then you have that, that rule, that thing that you can go by, that you can help with. And I think that, like, when it comes to the yes and idea, the more that you can bring to the situation too, it's a
Mhm.
gift to your partner, because then they have more to work with and they can be genuinely surprised. I think for yes and, one of the things that can go wrong is not anding enough, not giving enough, not providing enough to add to, being afraid that you're going to ruin it, that you're going to change the course of things in a way that's not going to be good. When things are rolling well and the most fun, it's when we're both being consistently impacted with each other's ideas. So we get to morph and listen and be taken off balance a little bit and forced to kind of pivot. That's when it's really good.
And there's energy to that when you're both contributing and there's this and then there's this momentum behind it. But if you just stop it, then there's like this death, this moment of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I think how this applies to us as human beings and how I would bring this concept into life skills is that we can hold multiple experiences at the same time. And I use yes and to validate and keep me moving forward. So,
Mhm.
yes, today is a really hard day. And tomorrow I will start on a new fresh leg. Or, yes, this is hard and I'm fully capable of figuring this out. Yes, I'm going through a breakup and I know I will find love again. When we can add and contribute and see the
Mhm.
duality in ourselves, then we're validating. We're not ignoring, we're not shaming. And there's this relief or this joy that can be accessed when you apply that to your own difficult moments, or and it's just more validating than going, oh yeah, I today is hard, you dumb fuck. Like you're never gonna figure it out. Good luck, let's just lean into that. Yes you are.
Because I guess that's the idea of just like, we talk about acceptance and accepting, what's going on, but it does need to be fleshed out into like, what is the next step too, right?
Yeah.
What else can you add? What else can you glean from it? What else can be the next step, right?
And also leading us into our next point, don't assume. I know through conversations with you that clear communication is of utmost importance, especially as an improv artist. Can we talk about this? What do you mean and what do you expect from your fellow performers and your students with this rule of don't assume?
Yeah, so I think that especially as people, we start off in improv, we learn about platforms and scenes that we want to be able to lay out the who, what, where, and sometimes we don't talk about the reasons why we want those things. I like to get people to do who, what, where, and why. I find those to be the important things. But who is great for status, for understanding relationships. If I know what our relationship is, I get so much information from it. I get how we would treat each other traditionally. So then I can choose to go with that or not go with it. If we were playing like a mother and a daughter, generally the mother would have the higher status and probably be the one that's more in control. But we could go against that too, and maybe the daughter is more in control, and that creates like a different kind of comic scene, right? So, who is really important for status and for understanding what we expect in terms of how we treat each other and whether we're going to do that or go off course, whether we're going to stay
Mhm.
the course or have a clash of context, I guess. And then what is just like the general what of what's happening in the scene. Mother and daughter are baking bread, right? But there's like a super what. There's a bigger what that gets developed, which is when we bring intentions and how we feel about each other into the scene, and that's the bigger what. Like what's really happening. Is the daughter nervous about them, leaving the house when she graduates school, and the mother is worried too? Like, is that what the bigger kind of issue is? And then we have the where, which is really, really important because we behave differently depending on where we are, our comfort levels and the conditions and things around us. And so we want to have all of those things in the mix. And then if any of our characters can have any reasonings why they behave the way that they do, then that's even better. And so the idea of not assuming is that when people start to get used to doing those platforms and start to become better at improvising, the same way as when we think we're better at communicating, when we feel like we've had every relationship and every issue that we could possibly ever have, people start to drop information and they think that other people will just understand because of the little trails of stuff that you're laying down, and we don't always, and we need a lot more information. And so I try to train improvisers to be really clear about the things that are clear so we can have more fun with the more fun things, like get the important stuff down so we can get that done. So I think assumptions, we can make assumptions in our relationships about other people or about scenarios, and sometimes we don't dive into further communicating how we feel or what our needs are or what we want, because we have expectations that others are just going to know and that it'll clear itself out, and we all know that that doesn't happen ever.
Common sense is common because we have had that experience in our own lives, but our common sense comes from our own personal life experiences, is
Exactly.
not necessarily the person we're interacting with. So I love to bring that don't assume, and especially again as freelancers when we're constantly working on different sets or with different crews, sure the title or the the work that is expected of you is of the same realm, but every show is different and every crew that you work with is different. And the people you interact with in this world are different than you. Like think of how many I saw a video recently where they had a bunch of couples lined up and they had people pair them into the couple they think they so like, oh Dana, I think you're dating this guy, or this girl, I think she's with him. And everyone assumed that they were all straight couples.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just like yeah, we are, you don't even realize how subconsciously you may be operating on autopilot and the things you think and the practice of taking a beat. And especially if you're in a workplace setting or in a relationship, not assuming that that person knows or see things exactly the way that you do or understands the concepts or your expectations for them unless it is communicated clearly. And
Yeah.
that's really what I'm pulling from that one.
Yeah, putting and the idea of clarifying, asking questions, if you're not sure, you might as well say you don't know. I think sometimes we're really afraid to admit that we don't know things. We think that it's this big
Yeah.
judgment on us. But I mean, everybody's just kind of so focused with keeping everything together. People are so in their own minds and in their own heads. People a lot of times aren't paying as much attention as you think they are, right? Ever something that's going to alter your day because of an assumption that you're making, I'd probably take a step back and clarify. And that happens in improv scenes and that happens in life. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not somebody who's gifted with being a mysterious person. I don't have much of an air of mystery around me, right? Like sometimes I wish I was that type of person, but I'm just not. But it's helped me in general in life because I don't think there are too many people who are out there wondering, worried too much about what I think about them or how I'm feeling because it's not. But yeah, and I think that we can be challenged too when we're having hard times as well, that we're in that balance of wanting to sometimes share with people and not share with people, and you don't know who's going through what. And, a lot of times, sometimes too, in work scenarios, you see how people treat each other and you don't know all the nuances of their relationship. You don't know all the nuances of what maybe other information they have that's impacting something that maybe you don't have. So, I mean, really kind of keeping your eye on your own paper and asking questions whenever you're confused is probably the easiest way to like get through it.
And you're right. Like questions are truly like the most powerful thing that you can put into your wellness practice because not even our feelings are right. And I don't mean that in like your experience is wrong, but the messages and the meanings we make out of those feelings are not necessarily always based in truth. So you not hearing back from the person the day after does not necessarily mean that he thought you were gross or ugly or is never going to call you, or because you had a bad audition or you feel like you have a bad audition and you walk out feeling like you didn't do good enough and it's horrible and you're definitely not getting the part and it's never going to happen. And then a week goes by and you've landed the role. Our feelings aren't always true. So asking those questions, not assuming.
Don't always know either. Like, we have to give ourselves so much grace about the fact that sometimes, like, you're making statements, you're saying things, and you're kind of just like it's a sentence that you're saying or whatever, and we don't hold ourselves that much to it all the time that we have it all figured out. And there are some people who you have very like mixed feelings about, in no way that's like angry or upset. You're just kind of like whatever. And then we think that every single time anybody says anything to us, or they do something, that it's like this purposeful thing, whereas
Mhm.
it's like it's the catastrophe. It's like we're just kind of sometimes just like just affected by things that really had nothing to do with us most of the time.
Which leads us into our next point perfectly, which is the importance of lifting up your partner. And I think this is around community, the importance of community and how we show up for each other. So talk to me about why lifting your partner up is actually a really important rule in improv.
I think it's important for so many reasons. Probably one of the bigger ones is because, it's taking care of the person that's there with you, feeding their needs, thinking about what will help them understand, help them shine, help them further the point they're trying to make or the world that they're trying to build. Um, yeah, it pulls the focus away from yourself in a few ways. It makes it so you're not totally centering your own experience and your own needs and your own wants, but it also takes a little bit of the pressure off so that you can truly collaborate with somebody. You can take into account their needs, their wants, and then you can also share a little bit of the weight of whatever's going on, whatever the situation is, whatever you're doing. So you really can work together. So yeah, it's great for so many different reasons. And it needs to happen. It makes for better energy, it makes for better scenes, better work when you're out there and you're truly letting someone really trust you that you're going to take care of them.
Well, that was going to be my question. Like, what is the experience as a viewer or as a performer when the people on stage are worrying about themselves, when they themselves are trying to puff up or be the lead or take the spotlight, and people aren't like, especially if all of them are doing that, like, what's that experience like?
Well, because I guess it's like you don't realize, but you're very drawn to generous performers. Like there's nothing kind of cooler than seeing somebody who's really just there as a vessel for whatever the whole thing is. Like that's a very attractive quality. And I think that like when you do improv or something, like comedy or a theater, anything that kind of puts yourself out there, you recognize, especially when it is something that's improvised, that like the level of trust that the audience has to have to just be in the room with you is massive. Like they're going and showing up there totally knowing that you haven't written this. If you've rehearsed it, you've rehearsed the skills to be able to do what you need to do up there. You haven't rehearsed the scenes. There's so much unknown, and they're giving
Mhm.
you an hour of their time. They're probably giving you a bit of their money, and they deserve to feel that taken care of, and feel like you've got this, that you have the confidence and the control to be able to navigate the ship wherever it's going to go, navigate the waters. And I guess, yeah, when you see that maybe somebody isn't listening or is kind of shutting down someone else's ideas, or pointing out their flaws in not a generous way, not in a way like where we're not in a way where we're celebrating mistakes and really absorbing them and making it the fun part of the thing, but when you're kind of like negating somebody or being judgmental with them in a way that goes outside of the scene, that you can tell there's an underlying kind of thing going on. I think that like unless it's a very skilled performer or a duo of people who work together really well, so they're able to be in trust in that moment, and you can tell that they're like riding the wave together. If there's no togetherness, it can be really jarring for the audience, and it makes them trust less, and they have to work a lot harder to totally let go too, and be in the scene and let us kind of drive the
Mhm.
car, right?
I mean, another great example for life. Like how much, like when you choose to be in community with people, and especially people who lift you up, who support you, who are generous with their time, with their energy, that they pour into you, like that just does nothing but light you up. And I think we've all, especially if you work in television and film, there are those people who want to reap all the benefits of the work, but don't show up in partnership or in collaborative ways. They aren't generous to work with. They're not helpful. They are snarky. They will shut you down. They will take your ideas or steal your ideas. And unfortunately, like that's just a horrible environment to work in. And how much better is the work when we come together and support and listen and lift each other up?
There's also something to, sometimes when you're with though like that unfortunate kind of collaborator or person, sometimes there can be like this, natural like magnet to justice where you feel like you have to expose them, and that it has to be
Mm.
whatever. And if you can see it and if you can feel it, usually other people can too. And oftentimes I find if you happen to be in a situation where you're navigating somebody who kind of operates like that, usually you can just try to get them to come on board, and then but just let them be, you know what I mean? I think that sometimes people can be absorbed with their annoyance or upset around that kind of behavior or whatever, when you kind of just got to let that person do their own thing.
Well, you can't control other people. You can just control how you respond to that behavior. And one of the ways you can do that is through Mel Robbins' famous let them theory. Just let
Yeah.
them.
Let them.
Totally. And yeah, I really do think that those kind of philosophies are good because it's not, it's not saying that that you're not there to try to collaborate or work through, and you're not going to get away from those kind of behaviors in your life, especially if you are in a situation like a freelancer where you're working with different people, sometimes in teams that aren't curated by you, that you're kind of jumping in, and a lot of times you don't have that much control over your environment. Sometimes you don't have that much that you're working with, so you have to be adaptable and you have to be able to say, you're doing this, this is your attitude. I'm going to let you have it, and I'm just going to stay in my own lane and try to add value wherever I can.
You mention that the generous performer is often the one that the audience likes the most, that they light up in a different kind of way. Can you articulate that? Can you put that into words? What do you mean by that? Like, why do you think that we are attracted to the generous performer?
I think you feel like you're taken care of. I feel like there's a sense of confidence that comes from somebody who shares the space well. And I mean, it's also kind of part of the fun of improv or anything is also that there's a certain level of mischief that's also attractive and fun too, right? So you're never going to get away from wanting to bring your eye to the shiny thing either. But I do think that when it comes to um, comfort and confidence, there's something about somebody who's looking out for people and lifting people up that makes people feel like they're taken care of too, like you're taking care of the audience too. You have a responsibility to them and everybody on stage, especially doing something like improv where they're showing up and they don't know what the heck's going to happen, and you don't either, really.
So I'm really hearing like it's the generosity creates a sense of safety. And when that
100.
safety, people are able to relax and do their best, both either on stage or even just enjoy, like really do the best they can to enjoy the experience and whatever happens on that stage. And that's what we need in our workspaces and in our relationships. If you are someone who are just consuming and thinking about what you can take from others, that's not necessarily going to make others want to be around you. It's not creating a safe space. If you're saying no, if you're assuming things or having high expectations, if you aren't contributing, people aren't going to want to be around you, or people won't even feel safe. It's the generous person that creates those safe spaces.
Yeah, and generous with like taking one for the team, and like maybe going out there and taking focus even if you don't have a great idea. We do an improv in long form where you edit scenes. So I might be out there doing a scene with you, but a huge part of the trust and the success of the scene is actually the people who are standing behind me, who are the ones who decide when the scene is over. So our scene could be going well for a minute, and then we hit what we're going to hit, and we're at a certain space. If they don't get us out of there, like then we could flounder and go, and they don't, and people don't realize that when the editing is not happening in the team, when the team isn't ending the scenes, isn't saving their partners, even if they don't have a great idea, taking one for the team, getting out there, starting a new scene out of nothing just to get the other people out there, it makes other people less confident to go start a scene because they're worried that they'll get out there, and if it's not working, no one's going to save them, no one's going to get them out of there. So it's that idea of being generous to also take the focus, to be like, oh, this isn't comfortable, look at me, go, you guys go take a break, I'll figure it out. Like
That feeling that someone has your back, but someone is
Totally.
there with you. You're not navigating it alone. You've got help. You've got assistance to lean on in those moments, which brings us into our next point. The importance of running towards straight danger and embracing those failures. We've touched on embracing the failures a little bit with the yes but the running towards danger of stepping in, even if you don't feel ready, but you know it's your time or it's that moment. Talk to me about the importance of running towards danger.
Yeah, do the thing. Go say the thing, do the thing. Sometimes we'll see scenes too where like, people are being vague and kind of dancing around something, and it's like, just say it. Say the thing, ask the question, don't be afraid to like affect things. Don't be afraid to make a big change. You know what I mean? Like we can be afraid, and sometimes we don't want to say something wrong or do something wrong, but I think that as long as you're acting in a space of respect and you're trying to you're trying to explore the idea further, the idea of doing the scary thing, saying the thing.
That is a very hard skill for a lot of people to practice. What advice would you give to anyone who is struggling with the fear of the unknown, whether in improv or in everyday life?
I would say that if you really were to take stock of your life and a lot of the like biggest gifts of your life, they probably were directly tied or kind of like a domino effect of probably a lot of things that maybe if you were to look at it in a certain light might not be
Mhm.
highlights of your life. Maybe if it's people that you met or a decision that led one place to another. There's something romantic about thinking, well, if I would have done this, what would it have been like? But you didn't, and that alternative world doesn't exist. Like
Mhm.
you're just playing off the changes and the effects that have had in your life. So I think that if you can look at some of the wonderful things in your life and see that maybe they wouldn't be there if it wasn't for a couple of left turns along the way, you
Mm.
can develop some trust in the fact that, whatever's about to happen has something lying in it for you, right? Depending on how you look at it. A lot of it is about perspective. It's the way you look at, what's in your path or what's behind you.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what this whole conversation is really about, is that perspective in a lot of ways. Is there a scary thing that you have bravely stepped into that you are really happy that you did? Maybe it was something scary or big that just felt really difficult in the time or scary at the time that you.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of scenarios like that where you just kind of have to just go with it. During the pandemic, my mom passed away really, really suddenly, and I ended up in Newfoundland. I ended up here, but a lot of things in my life had kind of built these like little safety nets, these little parachutes opened up for me. I'd gone to work on a cruise ship and put all my stuff in storage. So by the time that it happened, I kind of didn't, I was kind of a bit transient, which made it so that I could come be in Newfoundland and stay and be with my family and help them in a way that I probably wouldn't have been able to, or I could have talked myself out of if I had other responsibilities like an apartment or a reason to go back. And I had to put a lot of faith in the idea that everything was happening. I was where I needed to be, and wherever I was where I would be. And through that time, then I was in Newfoundland for a couple of years, and I felt like it had kind of happened to me, like all of the with the pandemic and not knowing when the work would start happening again, or whether I'd go back to Toronto. I'm in Newfoundland, and that's where I was at the time. And then I went back to Toronto and had, you know, my time there was really good, but I felt like I was still pulled back to here and I still had family responsibilities and things that I had to do. And I gave myself this opportunity to define it as I lived wherever I was at the time, and I really opened up my thinking to the idea that I would be wherever I was and work there. And I started to build bigger ties here when I was here, and I still continued to grow ties in Toronto. And then this last year in 2023, I made the decision that I was going to move back to Newfoundland. And it's totally scary. And I've lived in Toronto for a long time. I have friends that are family there, but my family needs me now. I want to create more of my own work. I feel like there's something, I don't have all the parachutes open yet here this time, but I do feel like I'm in the right place at the right time. And that kind of ability to, I guess, just make the decision and go and embrace it and embrace all of the things that, the things that don't go right at a certain time really are just the other side balancing of in another situation what it would have been there. So I just have to trust in the universe and say, as long as I'm here and I'm adding value and I'm giving, things are working out the way they're working out. Like there's no other way they would be. So
Well, I'm so sorry for your loss, but I am so impressed with how you've navigated this time, because losing a loved one is just painful in and of itself, but then going through a move that can be impacting your career, it can impact your relationships. That's big. That can be very, very scary. And for you to have taken that beat and realigned your perspective and shown up and done what you felt you were called to do in that moment, rather than go, no, I have to stay in Toronto. This is the only way for me to be happy, or this is where my people are. This is the only way for me to have my, like, you didn't make these finite rules for yourself. You opened
Mhm.
up that perspective and were able to dive into something where you didn't know where it's going to lead. You probably still don't know how far this path will go, but you're
Yeah,
on it
and it's like,
and
what
you're,
would it look like if, like, sure, and I think that, that there's a lot of things that that time kind of gave to everyone, and I felt like I was in a collective mourning over a lot of things with the world in that time when my mom passed away. So I think that in a lot of ways it made it a little bit easier in some ways too, because everybody was going through all these changes and people were off kilter and not comfortable in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I really do feel like there is sometimes, I did the hardest, easiest thing by moving back because it was something that I resisted for a while because I had myself convinced that it would be me moving would be abandoning having an acting career, would abandon parts of my life, my improv and things, because there's just a different, the community is just kind of percolating here, but it's so rich and so wonderful, and like things are happening here that are really exciting, and the improvisers and the comedians here are so wonderful and generous, and like, yeah, if I hadn't have given myself an opportunity to see what that looks like and to explore that, I could have told myself no, when really I also want to be a leader and I want to help like build more things. So, why cut myself off from that opportunity too? Because it doesn't already exist in a certain way. It exists. It's just it's different. That's just it, right?
I hear you made a decision based on your values rather than the fearful thoughts.
Hmm.
And that's how we want to show up. That's the best that we can do, is take a step back when shit is hitting the fan and look at the big picture and go, what do I want this to look like? How do I want to show up in this time? And am I going to let these limiting beliefs stop me from doing that? Like, is it true?
Yeah.
And you highlighted community, and I think that is the um really big thing that all encompasses everything that we've talked about today, is how we are in community and how we show up for each other. And how did you work to build that community up in this new chapter of your life?
Well, I mean, I'm the luckiest person in the world because I've always had like a real tie to the arts community here. I've been lucky to be able to come home and work a bunch over the last like
Amazing.
15 and 20 years. And there's always such amazing things happening here. So it's actually been really nice to like come home and be able to meet all these people that I've admired their work for so long and to actually start to get to know them. But it's through all of these like little connections of like I did a writing course in the winter with Sherry White that was done at NIFCO, and it was just wonderful because it was just so many amazing artists, writers in all kinds of different realms, from like novels to other screenwriters, some people who do more like documentary filmmaking, all these different things. And we just everybody came together, and it was, the course was only supposed to last for a certain amount of time, but I think it was supposed to be like 6 weeks, but we did it for like 3 months, basically just meeting together and writing and editing each other's stuff and creating little writers rooms and things. And it was like, just meeting people and being together and everybody kind of trying to lift each other up and puff each other's chests up. It just did so much for me, over the winter. It was
Yeah.
so good. And connections from things like that then help you. And I have so many great friends who do improv, who I did improv with in Toronto, who then moved here to Newfoundland. So I had like the connection here with that. And then from them, I got to meet all these amazing improvisers here. And yeah, so I mean, it's really just about, when everything fails, to just kind of put yourself out there and try to be available to have the experiences, to be able
Say
to
yes.
connect with people, say yes and.
I community is just so important for humans, but especially for creatives, because the world is still so much a place that devalues creatives. I feel like, in my experience as an artist and a performer, it's like that message of like, when are you going to get a real job? Or like, um, oh, that's cute, or something. And I just found that when I was around other artists, or when artists get together, there is this loving energy, there is this creative energy. And as artists, we want like any opportunity to practice and create and play, and being in community with other artists who want to also create and play in a similar way to you can be so freeing and fulfilling as a creative, and create that energy even if you're not getting paid for it at the time. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we can just rely on that as like a evidence that we are still in our elements, but we can find that if we're with the right community who's down to say yes and get in the dirt and play a little bit and be like, we're just going to figure this out, let's just goof around a little bit.
Yeah, and validate ourselves, you know what I mean? Like, I think
Yeah.
that there's a lot that, you know, goes again to that level of trust, like I talked about when it comes to an audience, right? Like, you know, we have to fight through, like, there's so much vulnerability involved in telling your stories and exploring them, putting yourself out there all the time. And, you know, there's very different piece of the commerce of being a professional artist than the artistry of being a professional artist. And sadly,
Mhm.
they have to coincide at points in order for you to be able to work at it the way that you want to, if you want it to be your full-time job. And not everybody does, and there's validity in that too, you know what I mean? A lot of
Absolutely.
people want to express their art in a lot of different ways, and not everybody wants to be reliant on it for work. But improv really set me free as an actor in a lot of ways, because it made it so that I had this outlet that I was able to go and perform even if I wasn't booking, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I didn't, it unshackled me from the idea that anybody was truly in control of me practicing art. Like, you know what I mean? Because, yeah, just because people, if I was having a period of time where nobody was necessarily hiring me to act, you know, when I started to do improv, you know, I wasn't very good at it and I wanted to get really good at it. And so I made a commitment that I was going to do 3 or 4 shows every week for however long it took for me to feel like I was, you know, feeling good about it. And I did that for a really long time. I did that for years. And you know what I mean? And still, if I had my choice, I'd be out doing a show almost every night, you know, but the, that ability to be able to go out and perform let me fail at so much all the time, made you kind of like impermeable to it. And you're also around all these people who all felt it too. And you start to have, it's not an elephant in the room. You're able to really openly be like, oh my God, what happened there? And they're like, I don't know, but good job. You know, we parked the car, we finished the scene, we did whatever we had to do. And so it just creates this atmosphere of that kind of like joy. You know what I mean? Of being able to do that. So I do think that there's something about allowing yourself to access that then can take the pressure off some of the ideas of what we think we're supposed to be fulfilling for society or for other people. You know what I mean? You have to define that yourself. And when you're presented around people, we don't do ourselves any favors when we're making the poor comic jokes in front of the, you know, the civilians or the other people, because we're playing into stereotypes that don't benefit us. You know, if we want to
Mhm.
charge $25 for comedy tickets, we have to be straightforward about the fact that we recognize the value of that, and we recognize how the value of what you see is going to be impacted by having artists who are paid to spend the appropriate amount of time being able to create, market, and provide that entertainment.
Totally.
So I think that we do ourselves a lot of favors when we approach it from a place of confidence, and we give it value. You know what I mean? We have to say this is valuable, we know it's valuable, and we are going to provide you with something that we know is of value. So it'll just move, right?
I don't work professionally as an actor or performer any longer, but I love moments where I can get in touch with that part of myself because I feel so lit up inside when I access it. And I kind of, after our conversation today, I kind of really want to take some improv classes for myself because I genuinely, I feel like you've helped me prove my point that so much of what we do as actors and performers and creatives really do apply to what we do in real life. And I think there is this is a fun way to do wellness in a way, to practice these skills in a sense of play rather than a pressure cooker or sitting and journaling. Sometimes it's good to like try these on in different ways. And I'm kind of inspired to not only do this as an access to light me up as a performer, but to use this as a form of therapy almost. Like rejection therapy. Have you heard of rejection therapy?
I probably have lived it for years, but what speak you?
Right. Rejection therapy is a putting yourself intentionally in a position where you will be rejected. So it's a practice for people who are really holding themselves back because they are so afraid of that no, or what people will think of them, or what will happen. And so they'll do things like, hey, Dana, can you give me $10,000? And I know you're
Right.
going to say no. Like, of course
Right.
not. So it's like that practice. And this almost feels like a little bit similar to that, of just like playing as of a form of trying to learn new skills. Anyways,
Like,
basically,
what is success too, right? Like, I mean, sometimes we have a very vague idea of what success is, so we're easily disappointed as well. You know what I mean? Whereas it's like, yeah, what are we expecting we're gonna do? Like, what do we expect is gonna happen?
yeah.
So sometimes playing worst case scenario can be good too, to be like, you know what, the worst case scenario, this is as far as this gets, and is that okay with me for the effort I'm putting in? Sure. And then you can be pleasantly surprised and still strive to have it be better too.
Dana, I feel like I've learned so much from you today, and I've really enjoyed just like gabbing with you about this stuff. It's always a pleasure to connect with you. Do you have any upcoming projects or a workshop or a course that you're excited about that this audience who are listening, who might feel similarly to me, could partake in or learn from you?
Yes. So I work with a group called St. John's Improv here in St. John's, and I do a lot of stuff with them. And one of my favorite projects that I have with them is a show called Good Yarn. It's an Armando show, which means that a monologist tells a story, and then a group of improvisers improvise scenes based on that story. And it's such a beautiful form to be doing here in Newfoundland and Labrador because we have the best storytellers in the world. And that upcoming show is going to be on September 27th. If you follow me at Dana Pud on Instagram, I share a lot of my classes and different things that I'm teaching. I'm teaching a class myself. I'm going to have a show in July. You can stay tuned for that. That'll invite some junior improvisers to come and play with some more senior improvisers and get some more like long form stuff happening. And I am doing some more self tape workshops with NIFCO, which is the Newfoundland Independent Film Corporation here in Newfoundland. And yeah, we do workshops to help people learn how to self tape. And then I come to Toronto all the time to do workshops as well. And on my Instagram, I'll be telling people when I'm coming there, and you can book me there.
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. I wish I was in St. John's to catch everything that you're doing coming up, but I will definitely be staying tuned for you coming into Toronto. If ever you do a workshop or a show, I would love to be there. I would love to learn some improv from you. So I'm excited for all that you're doing, and I just adore you. Thank you so much for being here, Dana. Now time for the legal stuff. This podcast is presented to you solely for educational and entertainment purposes. I may be a professionally certified coach myself, but hosting a podcast is not coaching. This podcast should not be used in substitution of working with a licensed therapist, doctor, coach, or other qualified professionals. Copy that? Amazing. See you on the next episode. Nothing but love, Jess.